in this game are magnificent as well, and I love how in this game, once you get the weapon, the game lets you give it a test drive to see how it works, so you don't have to waste ammo or, put yourself in danger to get the most out of it. Every Mega Man game after this needs to have this. It is an awesome way of letting players get a feel for the weapon. Now, they don't all make the cut, but I got a good deal of use for most of them, not just as an offensive weapon, but for utility. Take, for instance, Impact Man's weapon, the Pile Driver. Now, dashing directly into an enemy can spell bad news because it leaves you so close to the baddie if you happen to miss, and that's what made weapons like a Topspin in Mega Man 3 so pointless. But you can also use the attack as a mid-air dash, and that is very useful. You'd be surprised with how many floor hazards you can avoid if you never have to touch the ground, period. For weapons like the Blazing Torch, the shot angle's a little unorthodox, yeah, but in, say, Blast Man stage, a level that loves blowing shit up, you can prematurely set off the explosives and safely travel across the level that way with no worry. And assuming you're not doing Torchman first, you can freeze that instant kill firewall with a well-placed Tundra Storm. The bounce ball is awesome for how much distance it covers in a short amount of time. It can be a little erratic because it's almost like you're shooting 3 super happy fun balls at once, but you don't taunt super happy fun balls, motherfucker, and I'm glad Capcom knows that. The acid barrier is a great shield that's fantastic for eating through enemy projectiles. The Tundra Storm is ideal for enemies above you, and the block dropper is good for coverage, but nothing my other weapons couldn't do better. I didn't find much use for the Scramble Thunder either, because again, like the block dropper, I felt other weapons did a better job, and the Chain Blast was just a bit too slow for my taste. I like how it sticks to enemies, but it's not immediate enough, you know what I mean? With the double gear system, however, you can make these weapons even better. You're only allowed to activate 1 gear at a time, and they don't last very long as is, and if you let it overheat, you have to wait longer than usual for it to completely cool down. But as the name implies, you can do one of 2 things. Okay, 3 things technically. If you're low at health, you can activate both gears at once to trigger a sort of super mode that gives you enhanced speed and power, but leaves you crippled as shit once time runs out. It's like a fight or flight response, basically, but I completely forgot about this feature. It's why I had to rely on tutorial footage to show it off. Maybe next time I'll remember to actually give it a whirl, but I found the standard gears to be more than enough, really. The Power Gear lets Mega Man temporarily overclock his systems, allowing him to unleash attacks like a second charge shot, or very much like Mega Man X, you can overclock your special weapons. And in that area, the Power Gear is incredible. Overclocked special weapons are absurdly useful. Your Tundra Storm becomes a fucking screen nuke, the Acid Barrier can now eat through enemies in addition to projectiles, the Chain Blast becomes a super bomb that just fucks up an enemy's day. Against Blockman's second form, it doesn't stand a chance. This is where the Power Gear really shines. I didn't get much use out of it by default. You could only get like 1 extra charge shot before it overheats, so initially I thought this gear kinda sucked. But once special weapons are thrown into the mix, holy shit. But when it comes to overall usage, the Power Gear doesn't compare to the Speed Gear. With this, you can temporarily slow down time. You also slow yourself down to some extent, which kind of goes against the namesake of the tool, but overall, it's super useful for avoiding oncoming attacks. It gives you more than enough time to react to dangerous obstacles, like those firewalls and Torchman stage I mentioned earlier, and with proper usage, you can annihilate a shitload of things before they even know what hit them. For added carnage, go to the options menu, turn on rapid fire mode, get yourself the upgrade chip that automatically charges your Buster Shot without needing to hold the button down, and watch in awe as your power lemons rip enemies apart while in Speed Gear. Utilizing both gears properly in conjunction with the items you can buy in Auto Shop makes Mega Man 11 a damn good adventure, I find. Sometimes it gets a little too safe for the 11th entry in the series. Balloon Man's level reminds me too much of Spring Man stage in Mega Man 7 with how much you're bouncing around. And it makes getting this E-Tank a pain in the ass. Confound these balloons! I just want my damn energy drink! Torchman reminds me of Magma Dragoon from Mega Man X4, and the first boss in Wily Castle 1 is the Yellow Devil again. It's different enough to be fair, but come on, this is pretty blatant. And as far as post-game content, there isn't much to relish in. Maybe this will change with DLC, who knows, but Mega Man is the only playable character here, so no Proto Man, no base, you can't even play his role. There are achievements to unlock, so you have that if you like that sort of thing, and there's a challenge mode that lets you play every stage again with different stipulations, like collecting blue balloons or grabbing these character medals. Very superfluous means of getting more bang for your buck. There is a distraction with very little substance. The level design can be a little too long for its own good, and the lack of checkpoints on top of that can make dying feel overly punishing, not to mention the issues I have with knockback and its stun duration. But I feel there's so much more Mega Man 11 does right for that to become a deal breaker. The weapons are great, the double gear system makes Mega Man incredibly versatile in handling both enemies and stage obstacles, the game's production values and overall presentation is fine as well. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but concept, you see this is how you do cutscenes. I mean, these are still relatively static, but there's much more effort placed here in character animations and expressions. Look at Auto and Roll there, hiding in the back. That's the taste of fear. Mega Man 11 is a great return to the formula that Mega Man fans hold near and dear to their hearts. Now, whether the signals are proper return, we'll have to wait and see. But if you've been waiting for more Mega Man action, you definitely need to get this. It's available on the Nintendo Switch, the PS4, Steam, and Xbox One, so it's got all the bases covered. It's good to have you back, Mega Man. Now, here's hoping it isn't a one-night stand. And with that said, I won't waste any more of your time. I gotta get back to Mega Man X Command Mission. So thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. Hyper Mode Beatdown. They give you plenty of items that restore your Hyper Mode charges if you do some basic exploration, and there's no real penalty for abusing it, as dungeons will most likely end before you spend all your charges, and you can fully restore the party when you get back to Central Tower. My final party consisted of X, Zero, and Cinnamon. I had projectile coverage, melee coverage, and healing. A welcomed addition because unlike most RPGs I've played, Command Mission doesn't have healing items per se. Instead, you have sub-tanks. Like in the traditional series, sub-tanks can be used to restore health after you fill them up with enough energy you can find in these treasure crystals. In the menu or in battle, you can choose whether to spend sub-tank energy by healing a single party member, or spend a little more to heal the whole party a specific amount. Obviously, the bigger the heal, the more energy you have to spend, but besides that, that is the only way you can heal yourself without having Cinnamon in your party, because this game doesn't have the standard one-use healing items. Not in treasure chests, not in shops, none of that, and sub-tanks only last for so long. Cinnamon is the only character who has access to healing abilities. I'm sure with enough study and practice, you can somewhat reliably depend on nothing but sub-tanks and rock a party of 3 damage dealers, but starting with the second half of the game, enemies and bosses start dealing out pretty damn strong attacks that can make you drain your sub-tanks uncomfortably quick, so it helps to have Cinnamon on standby, but this has the consequence of making battles take even longer to finish, since you're only allowed 3 characters at once, and one is basically on healing duty and nothing else. And given how damaging bosses can get later on, it's unlikely characters like Cinnamon have a chance to do anything else without a string of good luck. Mega Man X Command Mission is not complicated in the slightest, but the game is so painfully one-note that after about Chapter 5, it wears thin. The battle system is easily the most interesting thing about the game, but god, the rest of it falls so flat on its face. The central hub is not very interesting in every dungeon. Every dungeon has you doing the same task. You travel down indistinguishable corridors, you got treasures to find a key to unlock a door, you find some random encounters, and then you fight the Maverick. There is next to no variety in what you do in dungeons. It's repetitious to a large degree and makes areas feel totally forgettable. After a bit, the game becomes absolutely mindless, and by Chapter 8 and especially Chapter 9, dungeons overstay their welcome with needlessly repetitive back and forth progression. The final chapter tries to pay homage to the classic formula by having a boss rush, and I got tired at the very thought. But thankfully, it's only half a boss rush, so maybe they got cold feet during the middle of designing this place, but it makes the whole conclusion feel disorganized. It was disheartening to learn that after the first few chapters, I've seen the whole game. The battle system is fine, but that has its own share of problems on top of the rest of the game simply not making the cut. The story is no more in-depth than what the other X games can cover in 2 hours' time, and that, to me, is one of the biggest sins you can do in an RPG. The NPCs aren't interesting, the dungeons aren't interesting, and there's little to do outside the main scenario besides collecting figurines, using Cinnamon to make more force metal, or send robots to areas you already explored to get some items you can't get otherwise. And before you ask what you probably asked anyway, I know about the optional bosses, but I didn't bother because I honestly stopped caring. It's not Sonic Chronicles bad, but it's damn boring. It required more and more energy out of me to just continue on. I didn't fall asleep, but the thought of replaying this makes me drowsy. I'd say you're better off avoiding this. There's far better RPGs you can spend your time on, and if something tied to the X series or just Mega Man in general, it's way too repetitive and slow to get going, and if it's not good at grabbing my attention, then it's probably not very good at all. Well, I was hoping I wouldn't end this marathon on a mediocre note, but I can't say I'm terribly surprised. Jumping out of the comfort zone to make a game in a completely different genre while still trying to pay respect to the series' roots is a tricky thing to do that often backfires. It can work, but in this case, it didn't. But that's all she wrote. We are done with the Mega Man X Marathon. I hope you guys enjoyed my trip through the next generation of Mega Man. It was fun revisiting some of my favorite games of all time. It was interesting getting to finally experience those I never played until recently. And yeah, it was good to give the Blue Bomber a revisit. Next time I decide to do Mega Man, it'll be with the Zero series. But just to let you guys know, I'm going to be taking a break from marathons for quite a bit. There's a lot of individual stuff I want to look at in the coming months, and dear God, there's so much shit coming out, I can't possibly list them all. But before I head into the future, I do have a couple of announcements. First up, my Pixel Empire store has got some new shirts. In celebration of my Mega Man videos, I got this lovely new Some Call Me Johnny design based on classic Mega Man. The artist did a magnificent job on this. Thank you so much. My Robot Master weapon should be called Dark Roast. Use it wisely. I also got this new shirt based on my shit-eating amiibo face. I've gotten tons of requests for this one, so here you go. It's my amiibo face. Wondering if that's an amiibo floating above me. It's not. It's a Funko Pop, and I can't fucking stand those. And secondly, if you're in the Savannah, Georgia area on November 10th, I'll be attending the Sonic and Sega Fan Jam event. I'm not going as a guest, I'm just going as a fan, so if you see me around, drop by and say hello. I'll be with Ryan from Brain Scratch Commentaries, my good friends from Behind the Computer Room will be there, as well as Ian Flynn from the Sonic Comics, Tyson Hess, director of those lovely Sonic Mania adventure cartoons, and my man T. Lopes, sexy motherfucker. Looking forward to seeing all those guys there, and I hope you are as well. And with that said, I'll catch you guys with the next video. Thank you all for watching, have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care. fuck this game. Oh my god. You know, one of the things I really enjoyed about the original, even today, was that, yeah, it kicked you in the balls, but it didn't do so repeatedly in the same stage. Stages were, for the most part, short and sweet, not really overbearing. This meant that you could beat the game in under an hour, sure, but the adventure was still tough, fulfilling, and more importantly, fun. This game, no, stages are overly long, they starve the shit out of you for health, and by the second half, the game has the American Castlevania 3 problem, where enemies now dish out more damage because of reasons. You have multiple lives in Infinite Continues, but it's borderline insane how much they expect you to do with the lack of resources given. I mean, as far as mobility goes, it's fine, you can control your jumps in midair like in Super Castlevania 4, so platforming is not so much the issue. But enemy and obstacle placement is some of the worst in the classic series, and like before, you can't jump on or off stairs. And sure enough, they love spamming those tiny annoying enemies when you're climbing them, and there's no whip dangly thingy to help you out or true multi-directional whipping. You can whip straight down and downwards diagonally, but this does little to alleviate the asinine structure of some of these levels. Now early on, you can get by relatively comfortably if you take your time, observe enemy patterns, and proceed along, but then the game becomes over-reliant on gotcha moments. Obstacles that you can't overcome by observation, but rather knowing how to deal with them after you already died to them. The worst kind of trial and error. The clock tower level is the king of this shit because there's simply no way in hell you're going to know that these gears will pop off from the wall and crash right into you. Whether it's right before a staircase or in this moment too far up the screen to see clearly, shit like that's cheap. And then there's the boss. I mean, my god, I fought werewolves before, but this one is just so fucking angry. She's ripping shit off the walls and throwing them at me, even the clock numbers. I only won this fight when I decided to get crazily aggressive, like I was jumping around as much as she was. I guess sometimes it pays to be reckless, I suppose. This part right here always felt luck-based. The skeletons are just out of reach with your whip, and it's next to impossible to climb up the stairs without getting pelted by their bones. You either get lucky and have one of them fall to the ground below, which again doesn't always happen, or you just take the hit and get them out of the way, because again, you can't jump on or off stairs. When the game is referencing the NES levels, then, you know, it's alright. I kind of know what to expect, how to deal with specific enemies, but this game also likes fucking with veterans. Like right here. Now in the original, I know there's some pot roast in the wall here, so let me grab that real quick and all. But in Chronicles, there's nothing here but an infinite well of fleamen. You jerks, I just want my meat. No, seriously, where's the goddamn meat? I feverishly whip every wall and crevice, and I either don't find any, or I do find something on the opposite side, and I can't get to it on time. I couldn't finish this game. I stopped after I couldn't get past the second to last stage. I know I was so close, but I got exhausted. Having to travel through all that nonsense again, the long hallways, this Frankenstein monster that takes too many goddamn hits to kill, and then death himself. The stage in the original was no slouch either, but this just went overboard. But thankfully for me, that's what Castlevania Chronicles Arrange Mode is for. Okay, I sort of lied. Castlevania Chronicles is not really two games. It's the same game, but Arrange Mode changes up a couple of things. Namely, the difficulty. It's more balanced to start with, and if that isn't enough, you can change the difficulty to your liking. Enemies no longer kill you in a couple of hits in the second half of the game. It's like the Japanese version of Castlevania 3. Now, because I can actually fucking breathe, I can go ahead and proceed where I left off. I mean, you still have to try. It is classic Castlevania after all, and a lot of bullshit also comes from the inherent level design. But not having to worry so much about your current health, believe me, makes things much more manageable. I'm less of a paranoid wreck and can get to the last level and face off against Dracula all in a matter of time. I'm not sure how I feel about Dracula's final form in this version of the game. I know it's the precursor to this badass-looking beast, but the way his mouth jitters creeps me out. Arrange Mode also gives Simon his new Kojima design in case you feel like playing as Conan the Belmont. And supposedly there's added graphical effects for some visual pizzazz, though I personally only noticed the different explosions whenever I killed enemies. I mean, I guess that counts. The biggest change is the soundtrack. Now, the X68000's music is by no means bad. In fact, it's one of the best things about the game. It was the game that introduced some of my favorite tunes in the series, namely the loading song that played when you were booting up the game on the original hardware, and the Mood Fight song. It's such a good tune, but Arrange Mode, I mean, you have to listen to it for yourself, because once you put it on blast, it's fucking party time. Arrange Mode is the way to go if you want to play this rendition of the original Castlevania, but no matter what I think of the better difficulty or sweet rave music, I'd still rather play the NES original or Super Castlevania 4 for my Simon vs. Dracula action. The NES game is so tightly designed and doesn't overstay its welcome while having just the right amount of challenge. It's still frustrating, but it doesn't piss me off. And Super Castlevania 4, I mean, Simon is such a joy to utilize in that game, and its atmosphere is second to none. Castlevania Chronicles, at the very least, is pretty cheap on the PlayStation Store. It's only $6, so you're not breaking the bank. And hey, man, if you want to kick yourself in the balls, give the original mode a try. If you can beat that, consider yourself a good Castlevania player. I just don't think it's worth the frustration, personally. But with that said, I hope you guys had a happy Halloween, happy vampire hunting, and here's to playing as Simon in the next Smash Brothers game. Damn, man, I can't wait to sink my teeth into that. It's about a month away, I'm so excited. But in the meantime, there's more games to look at. Thank you all for watching. Have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.